And we're off and running on the Krug Show Tuesday night, a warm Tuesday night here in Walnut Creek, California. Welcome to June weather. And welcome to the Krug Show. Raj in the house, and he's got his CMC jersey. CMC with the new contract extension. Of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. Both locations are open from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go get some brisket chili. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Tell them that Larry Krueger sent you to the great Pig and a Pickle. And this live stream tonight also brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, 205 Cypress Avenue down in Pacific Grove. Call my man Anthony Catania. He's at 831-521-5264. They're doing a little sidewalk thing the first Friday of every month down there at Sharp Corners. But thanks to them for sponsoring the Krug Show as well. Raj from RSF 49ers in the house, a force of nature on Instagram, soon to be a force of nature on YouTube as well. And he's with us in his customary Tuesday spot. Raj, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. CMC 4 more years. That's it. I'm good. We good.
4 more years. 4 more years. With all the precincts reporting, Christian McCaffrey has signed a monster extension with the 49ers. And he is going to be a Niner for the foreseeable future. Basically, he's making $19 million a year. He was already the number one highest paid running back in football. And now he's just that much more of the highest paid running back in football. The Niners give him 38 million reasons to show up to minicamp, as Kyle Posey wrote on Niners Nation. He's the highest paid running back in pro football. It's a 2-year extension that averages 19 million per year. Adam Schefter added that CMC added or will receive an additional 8 million over what he was initially scheduled to make. Tom Pelissero says it's going to be a $38 million extension. So $4 million. He's now $4 million higher than the next running back. He was already the highest paid running back in football on an annual basis. And so there you go. He's under contract for with the 49ers through the 2027 season, though that 2026 season, I believe, is a team option. Raj, what did you think of the story of the day? CMC, a lot of people were wondering, was he going to skip minicamp if he did, or mandatory minicamp if he did? It was going to be a story. Was he unhappy with his contract? Well, I guess he probably was, because they addressed the contract. What do you think of the biggest story in Ninerland today is that McCaffrey's locked up for a couple more years and got a little bit more cash. What do you think of it?
I loved it, man. I love CMC on the Niners. He is him, as the young Bucks will say. He's him, Larry. He's that guy. Like, he's transformed this offense. You can sit here and rattle all the stats out. We know them all. Offensive Player of the Year. He's the best running back in the NFL. One of the best running backs in. If he continues to do what he's doing in NFL history, he's getting to that point. He's setting records. He's been on the Niners for 2 years. He's got 39 total touchdowns with us. The guy is flat out amazing, well deserved. If you really think about it, still underpaid. With the amount of work he does, what he does for this offense, you kind of argue that he's underpaid, but it's well deserved money. The running backs have been undervalued, and I'm happy for him. I think this is the perfect fit as a running back for the 49ers. This is like the guy Kyle's been searching at running back for years, and he found his guy, right? And he's just a workhorse, but he could do so much for this team. So I was happy. I was excited. I know there's been a lot of talk. Is he unhappy? I don't necessarily think he was unhappy, but I think he realized, I'm your offense. We saw, a couple years back, they traded for him, and they had mentioned, hey, the contract, we'll figure that out as the time comes, because he was getting paid the Carolina money. He never really sat down with the 49ers to talk numbers and cents. So, he didn't have guaranteed money really left. And I think the Niners did him a solid and say, hey, look, you've really worked your ass off for us. We're going to pay you. So I like that. And 2027, this guy's going to be a Niner for years to come. I think it's a great move. He's a very, humble player. He's a leader in the locker room. He had nothing but good things to say today about the organization. So I'm happy for him. And I'm happy for the running backs, because this is a guy that increased the value. So running backs all around the world better send Christian McCaffrey a Christmas card, a box of chocolates, a good wedding present, something, because this man just got them a little bit more money in their pockets moving forward. So happy for Christian McCaffrey today.
Exactly. He did good thing for the rest of the running backs. But going back to the trade, I mean, this is one of the best trades in Niner history. They
Mm-hmm.
traded a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5 over 2 drafts for Christian McCaffrey. And McCaffrey has stepped in and has become an MVP candidate and is upped his game and has played his best football. And yeah, he didn't want to complain because he doesn't want to go anywhere, but he probably wanted more guaranteed money because the guaranteed money on his deal had run out. So here are the particulars. This year he was due to make 12 million in cash. Now he's going to make 15.5 million, maybe up to 16. Next year he was scheduled to make 12.2 million in cash. Now it's going to be 15.7 million in cash, possibly as high as 16.2. And then 2026, there's now a new $12 million salary for him in 2026, 17 million in 2027. That could go as high as 17.5. The Niners save roughly 8.6 million in cap space over the next 4 years after this extension. So it's very team friendly in that sense. They create immediate cap room and keep their best player under contract. His cap hit for this year was scheduled to be 14.14 million. It's now 4.56 million. If we assume the 49ers at least added one void year for the max cap spread. This is according to the article I'm reading on Niners Nation. So, but there you go. Their best player is in the fold, best offensive players in the fold. Mm-hmm. And they created a little cap room and got him a little extra money. And you couldn't take care of you can't go taking care of other guys in the room if you don't take care of a guy who's an MVP candidate. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's who he is. So to me, the fact that they took care of him, I mean, this was the no-brainer. They had to take care of him, and they did, and I'm glad that they did.
Me too.
I asked him today because Bobby T suggested that he was obsessing on his fumble in the Super Bowl, and I asked him about it. And, he didn't want to talk about it, and I didn't think he would want to talk about it. He had a great year. Mm-hmm. He said he doesn't obsess on the past, that he always looks forward and doesn't think backward. But what do you think? Is that, you think, 100% truthful, or is that just kind of his public stance? How much do you think that fumble in the Super Bowl actually does haunt him?
I'm sure it haunts him every day. I'm sure it eats at him. I'm sure, I mean, he's human. He's got emotions. He watched the game, but at the same time, he's got to move past it and kind of head forward. You can't sit there and dwell on the past every day. So I understand that. I think publicly, yeah, he's gonna say that. But if he comes out and says I'm gonna dwell on it, he's going to dwell on it because I'm sure it eats at him. But mentally in the game, you do have to kind of sweep that stuff and move on. So I see where he's coming from in that standpoint. I mean, we don't want to beat a dead horse, right? So I feel like he is trying to move past it. But media is gonna ask him these questions, and yeah, he's gonna say, hey, look, man, let's move past it, or I'm not thinking about it. And maybe he's saying that because mentally he does need to move past it. And it was a horrible mistake, but it wasn't the only reason, that cost the Niners a game. There was a multitude of factors. That definitely was not a good factor. I hate even thinking about it. So Larry, let's move past it, my boy. I will say this though.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the contract. I like how the Niners handled it very quietly. Like there was no ruckus. There was people that were kind of speculating, oh, is there a contract situation? A couple weeks ago, they asked Kyle. He says, well, I can't tell you why he's not showing up. So they kind of kept it under. I like how they kind of just was like, you know what? We're not going to make this a situation. We don't want the drama. We don't want we're going to take care of it. And Chris McCaffrey today said, hey, look, both sides were very professional. They handled their business. He got what he deserved. We're going to move past. And now Chris McCaffrey is taken care of. Now they can focus on the BA situation.
Well, and what I like too about the way Shanahan handled that, he wasn't a stooge, right? He didn't sit there and say, there's absolutely nothing going on with his contract situation. He said, I guess, well, he's not here now. We'll find out when the mandatory rolls around if it's, if that's an issue or not. Kyle knows he knows the contractual situations of his superstar players. He knew that they were hammering out a deal with McCaffrey and would probably get it done before the mandatory minicamp. But instead of just saying, it's definitely not his contract and that's not why he's missing the voluntary, he didn't say that. He's like, well, we'll find out, Yeah. So in other words, He doesn't have to be a liar. He doesn't have to be a stooge. He can just kind of, he has more information behind the scenes than we have. And he just said, hey, kind of kicked the can down the road, gave them a couple extra weeks to get the deal done. They get the
Yeah.
deal done, and he's there today at minicamp.
Yeah.
He's a great player. They used him. Here's one of the things I wanted to share with you because I asked Kyle this question today. Let me go share screen here. There we go. Let's see.
You asked him a lot today.
I did ask him a lot today.
Mhm.
I was active. I was
I
active.
love it. I liked it. I
I was
heard your voice a lot.
engaged.
I heard your voice a lot. I was like, Larry, crushing today.
Okay, this is the question I asked him. Okay, so this is the question I asked him about CMC. CMC had 339 touches this year.
I
Now,
know.
Earl Campbell averaged 388 touches in the
Oh,
3-year span in the 80s. And then to put this in perspective, but that's
that's a
Earl.
lot.
339 is a ton. And I asked him about it. I said, he had 339 touches. How do you feel about that usage? Do you want that number to go up or down? He had a really interesting answer. I thought, here's Shanahan for earlier today on what's an ideal number of touches for CMC coming up this year.
Kyle, CMC had 339 touches last year. What do you think of that usage? And this year, do you see that number going up, or you think it's more likely to go down?
I mean, I don't think it always needs to be that case with all the runs. Like we got guys that can run the ball and stuff. We got to protect Christian from himself. He doesn't like to ever come out, no matter what the situation is. And I do think that's something we could protect him with more. When you are such a threat in the pass game, it's a little bit different, and that's when you get touches from a running back. A lot of times you're the last choice, just everyone's deep and you throw it to a check down. So like halfbacks can get 6 targets in a game without one play called for them, just because they're in checkdowns a lot. And so how do we feel about those touches? Man, I'm glad he was out there for that check down. That means no one's around and he's getting up the field and he's as good of a threat on a check down as there can be. But if he's just taking the wear and tear with 20 carries and stuff every game, and he's definitely good enough to do that, and he's proved he can stay healthy, but I'd like to take some of that off of him and give it to other guys also.
Yeah, so that was the answer that I really wanted to hear. That's a lot of touches, man. 339. And let's be honest, I mean, part of the reason I think the guy fumbled in the Super Bowl is just fatigue and just usage. I think he was used a lot. I don't think he was near 100% come Super Bowl Sunday. I'd love to see him get, even if it was the same number of touches, Raj, but if it was a few, let's say he has 325 touches this year, but he has less carries, and they can give some of those carries to Garendo and give some of those carries maybe to Cody Schrader or maybe to Debo or Pearsall or, Mason. I'd like to see Mason get a lot more carries. Mitchell, if he's there. To me, that was music to my ears. I don't mind the touches if you're throwing it to him as a, in the backfield as a check down, because he's probably the best check down there is. But if you could take away some of those runs and try to not let him beat up his body so much and try to preserve him a little bit for January football, I think that might be in their best interest. And they seem like they've got the rock. It's not Dallas, This isn't a team where they don't have no running backs, and it's like, well, we got to run our main guy over and over and over again. We don't have anybody else. The Niners have tons of depth. They have an abundance of running back riches. All I'm saying is let's utilize that depth and get CMC to December and January in a way fresher mode than he was last year. I think that's one of their keys for the year.
I agree. And the thing is, it's not just, I mean, obviously, like Kyle said, he's on the field, he's a threat. And it's hard to take a guy like that out, and he doesn't want to take himself out. So I get it. He could be a decoy. You don't always have to give him the ball. Like he says, the threat of him having that check down pass is like keeps the defense honest, right? But you don't have to give him the HB draws. You don't have to give him the dive plays. Like let Mason do that a couple times. Let the rookie earn his keep. Let Garendo take a dive play or something, because those are the plays that caused the wear and tear on CMC. And I agree with you. In February, we want him to be a little bit more fresh coming into the season, because it's a grind. That's why a lot of running backs don't get paid. There's such a high level of instability because can they get hurt? They take so many hits. You don't need to do that when you're CMC, because you do have so many good running backs on this team. I get it. He's so good. He's a threat. But take a little load off of him, because I remember towards the end of the season, he's on the sideline. He's getting like treatment on his calf. They're like massaging his leg. And I'm like freaking out. Oh my God, is CMC going to be okay? And I feel like you're right. He was probably a little fatigued towards the end of the season. I mean, they ran this man like nobody's business. 339 touches, Larry. That's a lot for anybody,
It's a
especially running
ton,
back.
man. It's a
Yeah.
ton. And most of them were carries.
Mhm.
You know, he had, I think it was like 280 or something like that carries. He had a ton of carries.
Yeah.
Too many carries. You know, hand the ball to Mason, hand the ball to Garendo, hand the ball to Schrader. Use your other running backs. Get to January football with McCaffrey fresh, and your chances of beating Kansas City go way, way up.
Yeah.
You got to have
Yeah.
that cat fresh. He's got to be
Yeah.
fresh.
He's too good.
And he wasn't this last year. I think, you know, he would never make that excuse, but I'll make it for him. All right.
Okay. That's
Let's
fair.
go on to the next topic. The
Yeah.
Niners signed Logan Thomas. And, you know, this is a late signing for them. I mean, he's a 32-year-old tight end. He spent the last 4 seasons with the Commanders. He accumulated over 60 targets in 3 of the 4 years, with the lone outlier due to a major injury. And he's a former quarterback. He's a good receiver. He had 55 catches, 496 yards, and 4 touchdowns in 2023 on 78 targets. The Niners had looked for a tight end in free agency. You know, they lost Charlie Warner and Ross Dwelly to Atlanta. They initially attempted to sign Brock Wright from the Lions, and then the Lions decided to match the 3-year, $12 million offer sheet to keep him in Detroit. And then the Niners added Eric Saubert, the veteran. He gets a 1-year deal heading into, you know, this season. He's a veteran. So now you got Mason Pline, an undrafted rookie free agent. You got Cam Latu, but he's still rehabbing. Braden Willis, and we get to Willis in a second. But obviously they felt the need for Logan Thomas. And when Shanahan was asked about it today, he said he just wanted to overall add more competition at the position. He was non-committal as whether or not Logan Thomas will actually make the team, but they wanted better competition than they had. It was probably their thinnest position, even though they have George Kittle. There's not a lot of real known commodities at tight end outside of George Kittle. What do you think of the Logan Thomas addition?
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, he was not like an elite guy, but this late into the offseason, you're not going to be finding like all stars, but definitely a good veteran player, 10-year vet, like you said. And one thing me and you've been talking about is the fact that the 49ers have been looking for another tight end for so long. They've been trying to get that guy to help George Kittle, take some pressure off. A good pass catching tight end. They had Jordan Reed a couple years ago, and that was working until it wasn't, because he got hurt. And I feel like they just need that threat. Dwelly, that whole experiment never panned out. He was good at times through stretches. Warner was a good blocker. They lost those 2 guys. The rookies haven't really hit their stride that they drafted last year. Cam Latu dealing with injuries. So I like it. I think, like Kyle said, you need a little bit of competition. Push those young guys. Make them earn their keep. Because honestly, this tight end room, this training camp, it's going to be a wild race to see who starts behind George Kittle. But we need another tight end because Kittle's going to get hurt at some point during the season. It's not a shot at him. He plays very physical. He misses a game or 2 through the season. He said many times, he's been on record, he goes, I feel like it's a train wreck or a car wreck after a game. So they needed it. I like the move. He's solid, 10-year vet. The last 2 years, he's been very good for Washington. And if there's a guy that could come in and give us a little bit of a red zone threat, 2 tight end sets with George Kittle, I like it.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is, the Niners have 7 tight ends now on their 90-man roster. Kittle, Cam Latu, Braden Willis, Mason Pline, Eric Saubert, Jake Tungs from Cal, and now Logan Thomas. So, Kittle's coming back from offseason muscle core surgery. Latu's rehabbing from a knee procedure that kept him on IR for almost the entirety of his rookie season. I'll say this, while this is going on, today I was incredibly impressed by Braden Willis. Now, Willis, they flexed him out on a couple of pass plays. He just looks so much faster and better and ready. He knows the offense. He knows the plays. It's like I think this is such a vast offense with so much to learn that I think the tight ends oftentimes need a redshirt year.
Yeah,
And Willis and Latu both got that redshirt year. My guess is that Kittle is your number one tight end,
of course.
that Braden Willis becomes the number two tight end and becomes a receiver, and that everybody else, Logan Thomas, Jake Tongues, Eric Saubert, Mason Pline, and Cam Latu, all are battling for one spot. And I think it's going to probably go to Pline. So my guess is it's going to be Kittle and Willis and Pline.
Wow.
Over and that Logan Thomas will wind up getting cut when it's all said and done. But we'll see. I mean, as Shanahan said, they're up in the competition. They're trying to improve the competition in the room. It's pretty clear, though, when he was asked about Latu, he gave a very curt answer, like, yeah, he'll be ready for camp. But like it didn't sound, it wasn't like, yeah, we're really excited about him. I mean, it's their third round pick from last year. He's clearly doghouse.
He's dug himself deep
he's
in
deep.
the
He's
depths
deep in
of
that
the doghouse. Because every week every time someone's asked them about Latu, it's been a bad, snarky kind of answer. Oh, I don't like it. But I like.
But
Brayden
Willis looks good. I mean,
I was gonna say I like
Willis
that.
is a guy we all should be really excited about because he's got real receiver ability. I mean, he's not a tight end in reality. He makes catches where he'll dive and he'll get parallel to the ground, and he just looks like a receiver. He kind of looks a little bit like a fullback. I think he can be a jack of all trades. They really, really liked him. They gave him a gold helmet designation. I've talked to him a couple times, last year, and he's a real dedicated football player. He needed that redshirt year, but Raj, I'm telling you, this tight end spot is going to be one to watch in camp. Watch for Latu, watch for Willis, watch for Pline, and now watch for Logan Thomas. But Saubert, to me, and Tongues, Saubert looks a little slow, and Tongues looks like a camp body to me. I don't really think that
they're not going to make this roster. But
Tongues,
the other concept of it, Larry, is can they block? Because Kyle likes blocking. So if you got some blocking abilities, you got a shot to make it. Because Charlie Warner, that man was a blocking tight end, he made it. But with the Braden Willis thing, I like that. Because a couple weeks ago, when George Kittle was being interviewed at the podium, he said the same thing. He says Braden Willis is coming along. We feel like he's really making that leap. So you saying that basically, double stamps what George Kittle was saying a couple weeks ago. So I like to hear it. We definitely need a good tight end too. Because again, like I mentioned, Kittle, he's had a lot of injuries through his career, and he's coming off of surgery this offseason. So they absolutely need a guy that can step in for a few games. And, also you want depth at every position, and hopefully the practice squad guys, maybe Cameron Latu makes the practice squad, but I like overall, I like the Logan Thomas move because it gives them depth and competition. And I can't wait for training camp so these guys can get out there and let the best man win, because this is a 53-man roster, but it's going to be a really good 53-man. You have to be the best of the best to make this roster. So I love it.
Yeah, and you think of all the weapons the Niners have. If they can add another really good weapon by having Braden Willis develop as a receiver, that's going to be nice. That is going to be nice. And Willis definitely is looking the part on the field. I mean, he's running crisp routes. He looks explosive. He's making plays, and you look up and you're like, wow, that's a tight end pretty far down the field there. He looks good. He looks good. And it's not a surprise because he's had the redshirt year. He was their gold helmet designation player. So they really love his character. And obviously this guy's improved from year 1 to year 2. So guys improve a lot from year 1 to year 2. I was hoping it would be Latu, but maybe it's Willis instead.
We'll see. Yeah. I'm if he could take that leap, I'm happy. I don't care who it is. Just make sure we have a good second tight end, because it's been a struggle watching this team. When George Kittle, misses a game or two, it's very, very loud. It's very obvious
he's missed. He's missed.
Yeah.
I mean, the step down from Kittle to the next tight end is dramatic.
It's
One of the
crazy.
questions that Mayoko asked him is hey, asked Shanahan was, now that you've got, Cowing and you've got Pearsall, are you going to run more, three wides this year? And Shanahan said, no, there's no plan to change the offense or the emphasis of the offense in any way, shape, or form in any significant way. So we'll see. I mean, they look thin at tight end. They ran a lot of double tight end late in the year. Are they going to come back with as many two tight end formations this year? We're going to find out, I guess, as this thing goes. The Niners also released Raymond Johnson III. I really couldn't tell you much about Raymond Johnson III other than he was probably most likely a camp body. Yeah. The 90th man on the roster got released to create room for Logan Thomas. Now, one of the other happenings today in Niner camp, there was no Brandon Ayuk sighting. No Trent Williams, but his daughter's graduating from whatever high school or college. And so Ayuk was the only non-Trent no-show of camp was Ayuk. Now, the interesting thing is other Niners in the past have shown up to the mandatory. And when Kyle was asked about Ayuk not being there, he's like, well, some guys don't want to pay the fines and this and that, but they waived the fines for Nick Bosa. Yeah, they did. So I kind of wonder, nobody followed up with that, but are the Niners planning on waiving Ayuk's fines for no showing as this contract gets done? Then Debo was asked about, hey, do you give advice to Ayuk? And he's like, yeah, I do, actually. And Debo admitted today that the holdout, bothered him, and that he did advise Ayuk that, what, these things take a while and they don't always happen in a timely manner. And you may have to be patient and you may have to really grind this thing out. But what'd you think? I mean, Ayuk no shows. Justin Jefferson signs an average deal that pays him $35 million a year on average, with $110 million guaranteed. It's a 4-year deal, taking that AAV to $35 million, almost guaranteeing that Ayuk and his agent are going to demand 30 plus. They won't ask for more than Jefferson, but they're likely to ask for north of 30. And I think a lot of people feel the Niners' budget might be sitting between 23 and 25 per year. Wow. What are you thinking? To me, mean well and are saying the right things, and we'd like to get this done. I think this is headed towards the exact same thing as we've seen in the past, where it's going to be 10 days into camp, 2 weeks into camp, maybe right before the season starts, that Ayuk's going to sign. I don't think they're going to get it done until camp begins, and I think there's a very good chance that they're going to have to start camp without him.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation. I feel like they'll get it done maybe a little bit before camp, but it does seem like they're far off on their prices. I think Ayuk's here, team's here, they got me in the middle somewhere, and yeah, the Justin Jefferson definitely sent some shockwaves around the league because that's a lot of money for a wide receiver. But I love Brandon Ayuk. He's not in Justin Jefferson's wheelhouse. I mean, maybe he could be on another team. I don't know. I mean, this is the thing. Brandon Ayuk, at the end of the day, he is your fourth receiver, and you're going to go into these or not your fourth receiver, your fourth option on offense. Really, he got 1,000 yards back to back. It's great. He's got one second team is it all pro or Pro Bowl nod, right? In 4 seasons. It's not bad, but the Niners are going to use that and say, hey, look. You're not sitting there making like all pro every year, but then he can say, hey, look, I'm on a fourth option, and I'm putting up efficient numbers. I was like top 10 in receiving, but I was 30th in receiving targets. So he could sit there and say that and say, hey, look, if I'm on another team, give me the volume that CeeDee Lamb has, and I'm going to put the same numbers up. So it is an argument both sides have, and it's a valid argument for each side. So it all depends on what Ayuk's money value is. What does he want? And what did the team want to offer him? If it's 23, 25 million, we got a long way to go, Larry, because I don't think he's past that. Maybe 23 a couple months ago, because I remember when Sport Track was projecting this out back in March, it was 23 million a year. Now, after Amon-Ra, which the reports are saying he wants to be closer to that, it's probably 28 to 30 million dollars. So the Niners need to say, do they really think that this guy's worth that much money to him? Is his connection with Brock Purdy that much? Is it worth that much? Because again, they did draft some receivers this year. Are those guys good enough to replace Brandon Ayuk in 2 years or in a year? Because the 49ers did say they're okay with paying Ayuk on a 5th-year option. So there's a lot of questions. I think right now, with Brandon Ayuk not showing up, it says that they're pretty far apart from negotiations. I think farther than I thought they might have been at this point. I was surprised he didn't show up because, like you said, Debo showed up and this and that and the other. But I feel ultimately when they do reach a deal, they'll waive the fines and whatever, or put some incentives, whatever, in there. But I was a little surprised that BA didn't show up today. I will say that I was like,
What do you make of the constant drumbeat from Pittsburgh media that the Niners are going to trade one of their receivers to the Steelers? I mean, the Steeler people seem to be downright convinced they're going to get Debo or Ayuk before week 1. I mean, there's several guys on the record there saying as much. You think they've got bad sources? Do you think they've got good sources? Do you think there's something there? You think there's nothing there?
I just smoke, and I think they're gonna not back down. They're gonna keep doubling down. I mean, this is off season. You want to make your stories. You want to hear people want to hear you talk. Whatever, you got your shows. I mean, I'm sure there were trade offers. That's been said by Lynch, and Debo said today he knew about it, but they've moved on. So I think they're gonna hang on to that. I mean, next year Debo could be traded, maybe down the line. He doesn't have guaranteed money. The media asked him about that, and he says, "I understood what I signed up for." I don't think they will this year unless it gets to like a point where there's like no return. The 49ers like, no, we're not going to reach that value with you. But I mean, it's past the draft. It is so small of a chance for the 49ers to make any trades right now since the draft passed. If their golden moment was during the draft, unless it comes mid-season, Ayuk's on the 5th-year option, and then trade deadline comes, and then that's where they move it. Like that's the only time I could see it happening moving forward. I just think that the probability is small. But hey, if I'm a Pittsburgh media guy, I want to gas this up. I need something to talk about. I see where they're coming from. I understand it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think, again, they're just holding on to hope. If I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan and in a year from now, I'm gonna be sick because they all these reports are just like, oh my god, bro, I could have got. They're not gonna get either one of those guys. Maybe Debo next year, but we'll see. There's gonna be a lot more other receivers on the market. I think ultimately, Ayuk will get his contract, but it's gonna be like really close to, training camp, and we're gonna be sweating it because I do feel again. My big takeaway today was they're a lot farther away than I think I felt they were a couple weeks ago, but
It
yeah,
was an interesting day for the wide receivers.
it
One,
was.
because you had JJ out, he's signed and practicing and playing hard. You got Pearsall looking great on the field with Purdy.
Mhm.
You got Debo wearing number 1, looking lean and mean. I thought he looked like he was in great shape today.
Grew his hair.
And not only that, Debo to me said all the right things today. It's like,
He sure
there's
did.
always some concern about, mentally, is he going to be in the right spot with this potentially being his final year? And he was asked about it. He's like, hey, look, you know what? I know what I'm signed up for, as you said. I know who I am, what I'm doing here. He seemed to be in a really good frame of mind. He's like, I'm just focusing on this year, and I'll let the future take care of itself. And I think that's a healthy attitude to have. And to me, he's a very powerful. It's like, I don't care about every guy in the room's feelings, but he's one of the guys I do care about his feelings, just because he's a powerful presence. And if he's unhappy in the corner of the room, you're going to feel that. And he seems to have it all in the proper perspective. And to
Yeah.
me, that's a major thing. I mean, yeah, there was 2 things that came out today on the wide receivers. One, it looks like the Ayuk thing could go well into the summer and get ready for a long, protracted holdout. That's one.
Sure. Yeah.
2, on the Debo front, it doesn't sound like he's going to be mentally bothered by the fact that he's in what could very well be his final year with the Niners. And that's a really good thing, because him being in the right mental space is got to be on the short list of 5 or 10 factors that you got to have in the right direction if you're going to get this Super Bowl thing done this year. And so I was really pleased to see that.
Yeah.
Let's hit a couple supers here. We got this one from 49er Throwbacks. These fans will not want to hear it, but the fumble still weighs on CMC, according to Bobby T. Jennings done, CMC done. Only thing left to do is to pay Ayuk. Yeah, there you go. And we got this one. Chase Senior's in the house. What's up, Chase? We'll see you. He says Krug and Raj, fire. And by the way, Chase, I don't think we're going on Friday because I'm filling in on the radio from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I forgot to tell you that, so I'll send you a text. But we will have
breaking news. We just broke some news here.
Breaking news: the Chase Senior Krug Show Friday extravaganza will have to be put on hold for 1 week this week.
Oh,
I know
man.
that's heartbreaking to a lot of people. No, but it has been a good segment, and Chase has been a great addition to the Krug Show on Fridays. So good to see you, Chase. We got this one also not super, but Brian says, "Hey, yo, Larry, get Grant Napier on sometime to talk NFL." I can do that. I love Grant Napier. Good friend of mine. I was his intern back in college, way, way, way back in a place far, far away, long, long time ago. All right, let's talk about what I think was the main story or the major story today in Santa Clara. There had to be at least 3, maybe 4 Brock Purdy to Ricky Pearsall connections on the day. And these guys are clearly working. They're clearly repping on a side field when we're not there, and they're getting on the same page. And we talked about this at the draft. This Pearsall thing, yeah, there were other receivers that had better this and better that. But in a lot of ways, we said, you know what, Pearsall's a perfect fit for Brock Purdy because Purdy loves to operate in the middle of the field. He needs somebody with ball skills and good hands who's a good route runner who operates in the middle of the field. Enter Ricky Pearsall. Today, they were spectacular.
Oh, my
Absolutely spectacular. I asked Shanahan about it. I'm going to play you his comment. Here's Shanahan today at the presser after practice. I asked him about Pearsall and Purdy and how this thing's coming together. And here's what he had to say.
Kyle, how excited are you that Purdy and Pearsall seem to already have a little bit of a on-field connection and looks like they've repped it?
It's been fun to watch both of them. I mean, I know, Brock doesn't always get to watch how the route gets there, but he knows when guys end up in the right spot and they catch it. That's where quarterbacks get comfortable, and I think you can feel that with Ricky right away. He's been getting to the right spot, and when he has made mistakes, he understands it and corrects it, and I think that's why those guys are going to have a lot of fun working together.
Yeah, this is going to be Raj. No, I'm not saying this as a any kind of like, hey, Ayuk gets signed. This has nothing to do with Ayuk. Ayuk is considerably in its own category. Pearsall's not approaching Ayuk. But what I will say is that Purdy to Pearsall has potential to be prolific. And I'm not just trying to go alliteration. Purdy to Pearsall is prolific. Make a T-shirt.
We are making that T-shirt. We're going to do it.
But Purdy plays the game on time with accuracy. And this kid runs very precise routes with great ball skills and great hands. And Purdy loves to operate in the middle of the field, and this guy operates in the middle of the field. And when I asked Mooney Ward about Pearsall, he's like, yeah, man, he gains separation. He's got a lot of good footwork, a lot of good moves, really good route runner, And then when I asked him about Cowing, he's like, man, he's really, really fast. So I just think those 2 are going to make a huge impact. And I can't decide which one's going to make the bigger impact, but Cowing gives them a vertical threat and a guy that can get open, a good route runner with 4.38 speed. But Pearsall gives them a bigger bodied guy in the middle of the field that I think Purdy is going to be able to. These guys, you can kind of tell. It's like Purdy's the guy that spends all the time on the practice field working with his receivers when he's healthy. And Pearsall's the kind of guy that wants to do nothing but just run routes. And these guys are going to get more and more on the same page. And it's going to be one of these things where it's 3rd and 6. I mean, kind of like what we saw at the end of the year with Stafford and Puka. Yeah. It's like, I guess it was Wentz in the Niner game, but Stafford and Puka developed this incredible rapport, and it became like literally the Rams could break the huddle and Stafford could yell, "I'm going to Puka." And everybody in the stadium, they could announce it. Matthew Stafford will be throwing the next pass to Puka Nacua. And the defense still could not really stop it because Puka was so precise with his route and the timing was so incredible. And it was like borderline unstoppable. I think Shanahan saw that and said, you know what? If we can find a borderline unstoppable type weapon that can be, just the guy that Brock can just find at will, that can take us to another level and keep us on the field and let us dominate the clock. I think we saw it today. I mean, I've been seeing it a little bit more every time, but really today, for the first time, it's clear you are not going to be able to stop Purdy to Pearsall.
Mm.
It is good. These guys are going. It's May. It's June. It's early June. It's like wait till we get to these guys have practiced every day together for all through training camp. Wait till they've played 5 or 6 games together. These guys are going to be, you know, you're going to have a guy throwing with anticipation, accuracy, and timing to a receiver who Kyle just described there is going to be in the right spot. And that's going to be very, very difficult to defend.
That's amazing to hear. I love to hear that the rookie building the rapport with IU because let's be honest. I said about Kittle earlier, he might miss a game or two. Debo might miss a game or two, or Brandon, who knows? Somebody's gonna get hurt. It's just football, and for this guy to be able to, get that rapport with Brock, it's good. We need him. I mean, we don't know how many reps he's gonna get, targets he's gonna get a game. I mean, it's something you can't project. Rookies, it's always hard to project them, especially with Kyle. But when Ayuk was a rookie, he got a lot of play, and more than most people get. And if this guy's really building that rapport with Brock, Kyle's going to throw him out there. And this offense is expanding. It's, developing more and more since Kyle has gotten. They added CMC and all these other moving parts. And, if you really think about Persol, it was a first round pick they've had in 3 years. And it was a wide receiver. So I think they really want to include this guy into their offense and make him an integral part. And it's good to hear that he's clicking so far. If you remember the Super Bowl, I know we're all trying to block it away. They probably would have won if they had another game-changing receiver to help out. Because I know they had Debo, I know they had Ayuk, but they just weren't getting open. They weren't separating. And what you said is this guy can separate. Now we need to see if he could do it at the pro level against pro cornerbacks and stuff. But as we're hearing right now, he's doing well and doing those things. But if they had one more that guy that could separate, one more guy in the middle, it might have helped them. And I think that's what this Ricky Persall guy can do for this team is open that up. Help Debo, help Ayuk, because Debo, he played through injury, but there's no excuse. Everybody played through injury. But, Ayuk, he was getting stuffed. He couldn't beat the man coverage. It is what it is. Debo was getting stuffed. He couldn't beat the man coverage. Maybe this guy, he could come in and separate a little bit, open it up, and then the defense has to, put some clamps on him, and then boom, Ayuk's open again. And then deep. So I like it. I think it's good to know that he's developing some, good chemistry with Brock early on. They're both Arizona boys. So, they got that chemistry already intact and it's early. It's only going to get better from here. So I love to hear that.
Yeah, it's exciting. It really is exciting because it's going to be one of those things where other teams are going to be like, okay, we shut down Kittle. We've covered McCaffrey out of the backfield. We somehow found a way to shut down Ayuk and Debo. And all of a sudden it's going to be like, well, wait a second. They're in 3 wides and here comes Pearsall, across the middle, freeing himself open and Purdy, throwing the ball on time. And it's just going to be like, oh my God, that is going to be really, really hard to stop. And to me, he reminds me a lot of Puka. He's not quite as physical as Puka, but he might be a little bit better route runner than Puka, a little bit shiftier. Carlos says, how many running backs and wide receivers make the team? Do they keep Ronnie Bell over Danny Gray? Does Cody Schrader make the team over Mason? The offense is stacked, can't keep all of them. Yeah, I mean, I would say it's typically 10 combined wide receivers and running backs on this team. I would say it's probably going to be 11. So look for probably, 6 wide receivers and 5 running backs. And the 5 running backs are probably going to be CMC, Mason, Mitchell, Juice, and Garendo with Schrader on the practice squad. But there's a chance Schrader makes the team. And they go with an extra, maybe a 6th running back. Receiver wise, of course, you've got Debo, Ayuk, and JJ, and then you got Pearsall and Cowing. Those are 5. So whoever's, anybody else after that, whether it be Taylor or Bell or Tay Martin or Conley or you name it. I mean, they're all battling for maybe one spot. I will say this, Danny Gray is looking good out there. Danny Gray has got explosive athleticism. Ronnie Bell is got great hands. If you could combine them, you'd have a all-pro player. You really would. I mean, if you could take Danny Gray's speed and Ronnie Bell's ball skills and route running, you would have a spectacular player. But
Combined.
Gray is coming on. To me, he looks like he might be able to be heard from this summer. Ronnie Bell is going to be interesting to watch too, because he's tied into this kickoff return thing. And we'll see exactly who emerges there from that competition. In fact, that is what I want to talk about next. We've got a few more topics here. We've already talked about CMC's contract and the signing of Logan Thomas, Ayuk, a little bit about Braden Willis, a little bit about Purdy to Pearsall. But I got three last topics here, and the kickoff return play was, I think, the most interesting part of practice today. And it's because it's all new. It's all new. This is all new. They're practicing this for the first time. We're watching it for the first time. The coaches are seeing it on the field really for the first time in a coordinated pattern. And I'll try to explain it to you guys. Basically, the way it works is that it's a kick that okay, so you snap it to your punter and he goes to punt, and then the guys that are on the coverage unit can't move. Like, he kicks it, but they're all standing there at the line of scrimmage. Okay. And then when the return man catches the ball or the ball hits the ground, that's when the coverage unit can start to run. So, and then if you kick it and it goes into the end zone, it comes out to like the 35 or something. If you kick it out of bounds, it's just like it has been in the past where you kick it out of bounds. If it doesn't go to the receiver, they're basically, you're getting it at the 35 or the 40-yard line. But what happens is, when you watch this, the receiver catches it, and then because the guys can't run until the ball either catches it or it hits the ground, there's nobody around the receiver. There's nobody around the punt returner. It's not going to, nobody's going to catch a punt and get destroyed, because that's no longer possible, because now the guys can't even start running until the ball either hits the ground or the return man catches it. So the return man then has an ability to run upfield untouched for, I would say, anywhere between, depending on how fast he is, 7 to 12 yards of open running room. And so one of the speculations today was that possibly the return man is ideally suited to be kind of a bigger bodied returner. So watching the Niners, it really looks like Isaac Guerendo may have been drafted with the idea that he would be their returner in this new kickoff return play, because in a lot of ways, he's exactly what you're looking for. He's a big bodied guy who's about 220, who runs in the 4.3s and gets a head full of steam. And all of a sudden it's like no fun to tackle that guy. So it was really, I was really interested to watch this play. We're going to see, it utilized and experimented with throughout the NFL. Some teams are going to go with speedsters. Some teams are going to go with bigger bodied guys, fullbacks, Hughes check types. To me, it seems almost like an ideal thing for, remember that former receiver who was like 230 pounds, who played for the Bears, played for Tennessee in college. I forget his name, but anyway, somebody in the chat will remember. If you remember the gigantic receiver who's played on a bunch of teams.
I know.
And he played at the University of Tennessee, and he played for the Raiders and the Bears, and he's like a 6'4" return guy. He is definitely like the prototype. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for that big return guy. But this guy, Guerendo, might be it. But, they're still experimenting here. And this is going to be really interesting because, one, there's no, you're going to there it is. I knew James Foster would come up with it. Cordero Patterson.
Oh, Patterson. Okay. He was on
Cordero
Atlanta.
Patterson.
I didn't think of him as Tennessee. I thought of him as Atlanta. Yeah, Cordero Patterson.
And Jeffrey had this one in here too. He's
man.
he's
Kind of like a Thicker Debo.
Cordero
Yeah.
Patterson. Yeah, he's a
Yes.
big return guy.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, it's going to be really interesting to see, who wins this return job. But this play is going to be very, very interesting.
Sounds fun. I like that.
Because it's like you're going to see, you're not going to. The angles have changed. Everything's changed. You're going to see guys with a head of steam just run right by everybody. I think you may see actually some pretty big collisions. I don't know. They're talking about minimizing the collisions, but you're going to give the return man a solid 10 yards of running up the field. And then you're going to have these other guys who don't have that same speed coming down the field because they're running from a shorter distance, but they started later. It's just everything about the timing of it is different. And I think it's going to favor kind of like a TO type or just anybody who can convert speed to power.
Yeah.
In like 3 or 4 steps.
A big guy. It's intriguing, and it's going to give
DK
a lot of
Metcalf.
people,
Metcalf might be a monster.
Probably eat that up, but you don't want to put him at a return man. But I feel like it's going to open up the door for a lot of players that probably maybe wouldn't have made it. You know what I mean? So it's going to open it up, and there's going to be players that make this roster just for that position. I like the thought of Garendo. If you really think about it, the guy didn't run a lot as a running, and that's one of the things the media had asked him questions. So, you didn't really, how many games did you start? 1 game. So if you think about it, he's a raw prospect as a running back. Maybe Kyle gets him situated into the team or inserted into the team in this aspect, and then he can earn his keep. But yeah, and these wide receivers that want to make the team, they got to block, because if you can't block, you ain't getting the rock. So guys like Danny Gray and et cetera, if they want to make this roster, you got to be able to block on these plays. So it's going to be interesting to see how the special teams, plays out. I don't know. I will say this. There's so many good players on this roster, running back, wide receiver wise. I wouldn't be surprised when it comes to training camp at some point around there. They might trade some players because they got to get some value out of these guys. You can't just cut them and hope they make it to practice squad. They've done it before when they've been loaded at certain positions and they get some late round value out of them. So I think down the line, we're going to see a few trades as training camp comes around and getting some draft picks for them.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like Ronnie Bell could easily be one of those guys. If he has another, good preseason, maybe he has a 100-yard day in one of the preseason games, I could see him being dealt possibly for a day 3 pick. And maybe he'll be somebody of more significance than that. And it might be multiples, but I think you're absolutely right. Luis Madera says, did you get a chance to evaluate Tatum Bethune? How did he look? What are the chances of him making this team? It's going to be tough. I mean, you got Jalen Graham, you got D. Winters, you got Devondre Campbell, and then you've got some really good special team linebackers. Curtis Robinson's excellent on special teams.
You might.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was trying to tell you, Mike's.
Did I?
You muted it. I think you muted yourself.
Just check my settings, make sure my mic's okay here. Hold on.
Be good now.
We're good.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, but I don't know if you heard that. Luter, Robinson, Beal, Winters, Odom, Saubert, Winters, DFF, and Turner were their first team coverage unit guys. So I didn't see Tatum Bethune out there today. I'll say this: Bethune looks, his workout numbers were just okay. He ran in the 4.6s, but if you watched him at Florida State, he was always around the football. So he's like one of these guys that has good instincts and knows how to play. And I actually think that they probably took the wrong Florida State linebacker. There was a guy named Kalen DeLoach who went to Tampa's camp as an undrafted guy who ran in the 4.4s. And I think Deloach would have been a much better player than Bethune, but they like Bethune, and we'll see. I think he's going to be hard fought to make the roster. My guess is practice squad for Tatum Bethune. He hasn't stood out to me completely, but when I watched him at Florida State, he did stand out, and he made a lot of plays at Florida State. So something to keep count of for sure. Two last things. Two guys that I thought really looked good. One on offense, one on defense. Drake Nugent. You know, the center competition could be really, really juicy. You got Brendel, you've got Pooney, you've got, Jarrett Kingston is a really good athlete. I was watching him today at practice. Jarrett Kingston is, he really, you can see the strength in the upper body, but, he's also got good feet. You got Zakel, who could play a little center. You got McKivitz, who can play center in a pinch. You got Feliciano, who can play center. But then I think all of them don't look quite as good as Drake Nugent. And Nugent, whose dad is friends with Chris Forster, the Niner O-line coach, going way, way back. Nugent played at Stanford for 3 years and then transferred to Michigan. He was first team All Big Ten this year for the Wolverines. He was arguably the best offensive line in all of college football, and Nugent played a major role on it. He was moving guys today in practice. Now, I realize he's 6'1". People say, well, that's too short. A 6'1.5" center when your quarterback is 6 feet tall is not the worst thing. People say, oh, well, he should be bigger. Yeah, do you really want a 6'5" center standing in front of Brock Purdy in the middle of the formation on every snap? Or would you rather have a 6'1" powerhouse like Nugent? But I will say this, Nugent moves people. Like, if you watch him, he's tenacious, and he plays with leverage, and he locks his arms out, and he drives his legs. I'm telling you, this kid's smart. He's tough. He was productive for 2 different programs. He's a leader. He was the captain at Stanford. Well coached at Stanford, well coached at Michigan. Drake Nugent. Do not be surprised if Drake Nugent beats out Jake Brendel this summer.
Ooh, I like it. I need it. I want it. I need it to happen. We need to upgrade. If he's an upgrade, I'm happy. I'm a little worried about Jake Brendel because he's got knee arthritis. It's not good for an offensive lineman, for anybody really. But when Kyle said that a couple weeks ago, I was like a little panicky. But Drake Nugent, he looked good. He was good in college. He played in Michigan. But you're right, undersized. I know he's a strong guy and he mows people over, but will he be able to do that against big-time defensive linemen in the NFL coming down his neck? So that's what he's got to prove. He's probably had to prove himself his whole career. So I'm sure he's not, it's something not new to him. So I'm hoping he can win that job because Jake Brendel with knee arthritis, I imagine it'll flare up at some point in the season, and that's not good. So I'm rooting for Drake Nugent. I'm rooting for everybody on this O-line. I want all of them to be elite because that is an issue every Niner fan has talked about. So let's pray that all the offensive linemen are all pros this year, Larry. That's it.
Well, it was good to see that in Pooney and Nugent, Mays, Hubbard, they've got some decent backup offensive linemen in this camp that they've upgraded there for sure. Their depth, I think, on the offensive line looks better. To me, Kingston is interesting because if you look at him, he has good footwork and really strong upper body and very explosive looking offensive lineman. He really is strong. So Pooney, Kingston, and Nugent, I think are 3 guys to really, really watch for this summer.
I don't know if he's going to beat out Brendel, but I haven't still tagged in as a practice squatter, but we'll see, man. If he can, I'll be through the moon.
Couple last ones I want to read off this. I'm reading better now, so I'm seeing my chat better than I have in the last couple of weeks. And now I'm actually, for some of you who used to send me a lot of chats and I haven't read a lot of them, it's because I've been blind the last couple of weeks with my new contact lenses, but I got an adjustment on my lenses and I'm seeing much better now. So Taylor Gang says, Larry, give us that smart quote. Classic Larry. Well, yeah, there you go. Now you're a little bit smarter. Drake Nugent is coming on. You can share that at the water cooler. One other guy that we asked Mooney Ward today about Renardo Green, and it's funny. he starts talking about him, and he looks at the PR girl, and he's like, "Is it Renardo or is it Ricardo?" And she's like, "It's Renardo." He's like, "Yeah, man, he's a dog. He's got sticky coverage. He's a dog out there." So once we figured out his name's Renardo Green and not Ricardo Green, Mooney gave him the thumbs up. So that was good to hear, because Mooney's the one thing I love about Mooney Ward, he's a straight shooter, man.
Yeah.
He doesn't pull a lot of punches. He doesn't lie. He's as honest as the day is long. You know what I mean? He's almost like brutally honest, like maybe too honest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when he was asked about Renardo Green, he's like, "Yeah, man, he's a dog. He's a dog." And you can tell he plays tight coverage. Renardo Green is going to be a really interesting guy to watch because I think Luter is going to be that third corner. Luter to me looks really good. Luter looks like he's going to make a huge step forward, but Renardo Green is a player and he's ready to play right now. And the question is he going to be a nickel? Is he going to be an outside guy, or is he going to be their starting free safety? Like if you said to me, like, what's a major question for the Niners? It's free safety.
Yeah.
Can Vonga play free safety? If not, can Jair play free safety? If not, can Mustafa play free safety? If not, I mean, who's going to play free safety for the 49ers? And I don't know that they have a free safety, but you know what? Renardo Green is a really good cover guy, really good athlete. He might be the starter at free safety. I know that sounds weird because we're thinking of him as a corner, and he's definitely would be undersized.
Yeah.
But if you really look at it, Raj, and the way the safety position's evolving in the NFL year after year, every year that goes by, the thumper gets replaced by the coverage guy. And now we're at a point where if you're playing a lot of cover 3 with that deep middle, there's a ton of grass to cover down the field. And if you got a corner like Renardo Green, that might be the route. I mean, that might be the route. Do not be shocked if they wind up starting Renardo Green at free safety.
Wow, that's a big take. I didn't think of that. Yeah, I mean, I thought he'd be locked in at nickel, but you never know. Honestly, I think secondary is going to be a heck of a position battle. I mean, safety, like you said, there's still questions in safety. They got a lot of corners. They added some veterans, Rocky Sin and a couple other guys during the offseason. There's so many guys. They drafted some players, just people from last year, Luter, like you said, Womack. So honestly, there's a ton of talent, and I think this might be I know we're going to talk about wide receiver and all these other positions. This might be the battle of the offseason, the cornerback, the safety, the secondary, and in general. It's a very deep, loaded, talented pool of players, and they're going to be jockeying for position. You can only keep so many. I mean, practice squad's going to be loaded with talent. So I think it's a good thing. There's a lot of good players, and players like Ambry Thomas, he better bring his A++ game, because if he doesn't, some of these guys are going to take his spot on that roster.
I think if you're Shanahan, the thing you got to be the most pleased about is that you break now for 40 days. You're going to come back in mid to late July for training camp. You're going to have good competition for those backup quarterback spots. You got a great competition brewing at running back, wide receiver. Now with the addition of Logan Thomas, you're deeper at tight end. The backup job competition along the offensive line could be fierce. There's some new faces on that defensive line. There may be some new names this summer. If Drake Jackson and Robert Beal Jr. don't step it up, the Niners are probably going to have to look outside the organization for more edge rushers like they did last summer. But then, the linebacker competition without Greenlaw, who's going to step up there? The safety competition is going to be really, really good. And the corner depth is the best it's been since Shanahan's been here. So,
I think so.
The competition, and then you mix in the new return rules and all the, intricacies that go into perfecting that whole thing, and a new defensive coordinator. It's going to be an exciting July training camp for the 49ers. I really believe that. James Foster says, bring on Chase Sr. as a guest. Or Chase, call in, bro. Yeah. Well, we're getting towards the end of the show, but we do love talking ball with Chase on Fridays. Catch him every Friday on the Krug Show at 10:45 in the morning. Raj, you got a final thought? What do you got cooking the rest of the week, man? It's gonna be a smoke show tomorrow down in Santa Clara. It's gonna be hot, real hot. I'm gonna be there early, but I'm expecting I may have to go, instead of just one thing of right guard. I may have to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I may have to go 5 or 6 right guard strokes tomorrow. It's going to be that kind of a day.
Yeah, stay hydrated tomorrow, Larry. I don't need you passing out on me in mini camp. So stay hydrated. Yeah, I'm just gonna be working and posting content like usual. So nothing changes. But I need you to stay hydrated out there. It's gonna be caliente.
It is going to be very, very hot.
Yeah.
And when you say caliente, there was that show on the Univision that was so great to watch. It was all these hot girls dancing around, and it was called Something Caliente. I do remember that.
Caliente. I don't know. What
I speak no Spanish, but man, I got to admit, I watched it for more than. I was watching it. And it was something caliente. So what does that mean, Raj? Caliente means spicy.
Something hot. Something hot. Yeah, hot.
It was
something
hot.
was hot. I know. We know
hot.
what you were watching it for. Oh, my God.
She was hot. All right, that does it for Raj. I'm Larry. Have a great have a caliente night. Stay hot.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what